They didn't scream. They didn't fight. They just told me to sit on the log and wait. Said they'd be right back with the picnic basket. Said the cooler was too heavy and they needed to grab it from the truck. And then the engine started. And then it never came back. I sat there for a full hour before I let myself believe what had just happened. That Justin, my son, and Lynn, his perfect, tidy wife, had driven away. That they'd brought me out here, miles deep into Sequoia Woods, not to enjoy a Sunday lunch, but to leave me. To die. To disappear. I was 74 years old. My hip hadn't healed since the fall in April. I had no phone, no cane, no bag. Just my sweatshirt, my walking shoes, and the nothingness of trees around me. The first thing I felt was shame, like I'd done something wrong, like maybe I had misheard them. Maybe I had said something they didn't like that morning, about Lynn's awful cooking or the way Justin never visited me without asking for money. Maybe I was just old and bitter and impossible, like Lynn said last Christmas. Then the shame gave way to heat. It was mid-September, but the sun was strong, the kind that tricked you into forgetting summer had technically ended. I moved into the shade of a pine and sat on the roots, trying to piece together my next step. "Okay, Edna," I whispered to myself. "Think." But my mind wasn't good at sharp things anymore. I used to be a notary. Worked for 35 years in the same dusty office on Mill and Main. Back then, my mind was quick. I could spot a forged signature in seconds. But now I forgot words sometimes, names, directions. I hadn't driven in over a year, but I hadn't forgotten betrayal. Justin's truck had pulled away around 11:30. It was past 1 now. They weren't coming back. And if they'd taken my phone out of my purse on purpose, and I knew now they had, then they weren't planning on being found out either. That's when the second thought hit me. The insurance. 2 months ago, Justin had started asking about my policy. Innocently, of course. "Hey, Ma, you ever look at those things lately? You know, in case something happens?" He'd asked to see the papers. Said he just wanted to be prepared. I didn't think much of it at the time. I even laughed, told him it was under the old freezer in the garage. And just last week, Lynn asked if I'd changed my beneficiary after Dad died. I thought she meant well, thought it was her strange way of showing care. But now, sitting in the dirt, my bones beginning to ache in that way they do when something terrible is happening, I understood. They thought it would be quick, that the bears or the cold or a missed step would take me, that they could tell the police I'd wandered off, that I was old, that people disappear all the time, that it wouldn't matter because really, who cared about one old woman? I wasn't crying, not yet, not even scared. I was furious, and that fury was what got me up. The pain shot through my right leg the second I tried to stand. Sharp and electric, like fire lacing through my thigh. I bit my lip and waited for the wave to pass. Then I tried again, slower this time, using the tree trunk for support. My hand dug into the bark. I pulled myself upright, inch by inch. It took me 20 minutes just to find a rhythm to walk, but I did. One foot, pause, the next. My breath coming fast. My teeth clenched. The forest didn't make it easy. There were roots like ropes, fallen branches, uneven slopes. I fell twice before I made it to a clearing. My palms scraped, my knee bleeding through the denim. But I got up. Every time. I told myself to follow the sun. West. Always west. That's where the road had to be. Around 4, I found a small stream. I drank from it, like an animal. Cupped the water in my hands and let it spill down my front. I sat there for a while. Not long. Just enough to catch my breath. Then I moved again. I walked until night came. The cold settled fast. I'd forgotten how cruel the air gets when the sun disappears. I found a hollow under a low-hanging pine, gathered fallen leaves around me, and laid down stiff as a plank. I didn't sleep. My mind was on fire, too loud to rest. It kept saying the same thing over and over. They left you to die. Your son left you to die. I waited for the animals to come, for fear to sink in, for the will to give up. But none of it came. Only this. If I survive, they lose. If I crawl out of here alive, I'll take it all back. I stayed awake the whole night, my breath visible in the dark, the woods speaking in rustles and snaps. And when the first light came, thin, gray, holy, I stood again, and I walked. By morning, my body had stiffened into one solid ache. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was weight. Every breath felt like pulling gravel through my chest. But I was alive, and alive meant moving. The forest around me had changed colors overnight. Morning mist clung to the underbrush, pale and cold, and the air smelled of pine and iron. Somewhere far off, a woodpecker drummed on a hollow tree. I took it as a sign. Something still had rhythm here, even if I didn't. My shoes were soaked through from the stream. My left sock had torn open, the edge rubbing my heel raw. When I tried to walk, my hip screamed. But the scream was quieter now, like a sound that had accepted it wouldn't be heard. I followed the water. That was something my husband, Tom, used to say. You get lost? Follow the water. It'll take you somewhere people live, or somewhere they died trying. I never thought I'd need that advice for real. Every few hundred yards I stopped, leaning against a tree. My throat was raw from thirst, my lips split open. I chewed pine needles just to make saliva, the taste sharp and bitter. I thought about how Lynn used to scold me for keeping survival junk in the car. Old blanket, flashlight, granola bars. I'd taken them out last month when she offered to clean the trunk. I realized now what she'd really done. They'd planned this for weeks, maybe longer. There was a moment, somewhere between the second fall and the fifth, when I wanted to lie down and let it end. It came quiet, like a whisper. No one's coming, Edna. No one's looking. I almost believed it. Almost. Then I saw a candy wrapper stuck to a bush. Shiny, purple, half buried in dirt. A stupid thing, but human. I picked it up and tucked it into my pocket, like proof that the world still existed beyond these trees. The sun climbed higher. Noon, maybe. I was dizzy now, moving slower. The sound of rushing water grew stronger ahead, maybe a wider stream, maybe a river. I crawled the last few feet down a slope and saw it. A narrow creek cutting through the woods, shallow but running fast. I dropped to my knees and drank again. It tasted like life and dirt at once. Then I lay on my side, my cheek pressed into moss, and laughed. A dry, broken laugh that startled a bird out of a branch nearby. For a few minutes, I let myself imagine a helicopter, a rescue team. The news headline, "Elderly woman found alive after 3 days in wilderness." But even in my fantasy, no one came for me. Justin wasn't searching. Lynn wasn't crying. They were probably already making calls to the insurance office, pretending to be heartbroken. I sat up, my fingers shaking. "Not yet," I whispered. "You don't get to win yet." That's when I remembered the road. Before we'd turned onto the forest trail, we'd driven past a gas station and a faded green sign, County Route 17. I'd seen it only for a second, but it had been west of the rising sun. If I could keep walking west, I'd hit it again. It sounded ridiculous. But ridiculous plans were all I had left. The next hours were a blur of motion and falling. The forest floor turned to rock and roots. Once, I slipped and hit my shoulder hard enough to make my eyes blur. I thought I heard someone calling my name. I answered, but it was only the wind through the branches, cruel and soft. By evening, I stumbled into a small clearing. There was something there, a cabin, or what was left of one. Roof caved in, door hanging sideways. But it had 4 walls and a shadow from the wind. I crawled inside like an animal. The air smelled of rot and old smoke. A metal cot stood in the corner, rusted but still solid. I sat on it, my legs trembling. On the floor was a tin can, a broken lighter, and a torn magazine from 2004. I couldn't light a fire. My hands wouldn't obey. But I found a blanket, stiff and dirty, and wrapped it around myself anyway. That night, I let myself cry. Not because I was scared, but because I was angry. Angry that I'd spent a lifetime making it easy for them, signing checks, paying mortgages, forgiving every little disrespect as stress. Angry that I'd been too polite to notice when love had turned into convenience. Somewhere in the dark, something howled. I froze, holding my breath. The sound faded. Just a coyote, maybe, or the forest laughing. I whispered into the silence. You should have made sure I was dead, Justin. Then I closed my eyes and rested my head on the cold metal frame. The last thing I remember before drifting off was the shape of the trees through the hole in the roof, dark against the bruised sky. I made myself a promise then. Tomorrow, I find the road. Tomorrow, I crawl if I have to. Tomorrow, I start taking everything back. When I woke, it was from the sound of my own teeth chattering. The blanket was damp from dew. Dawn light leaked through the cracked boards like thin fingers. I was still in the same broken cabin, but my body felt older by 10 years. My tongue was swollen from thirst. My right leg had turned the color of clay. For a minute, I thought I'd died during the night. Then I tried to move, and the pain reminded me I hadn't. Every joint screamed. My hands were cut and blistered. My palms looked like the bark of the trees I'd clung to. But my mind was sharper now. Hunger does that to you. Strips you clean, leaves only what matters. I sat up, slow, counted breaths. 1, 2, 3. The world didn't spin this time. That was progress. I needed food. Water I could find again, but without food I'd fade before I reached any road. I searched the small shelter. Nothing. Only the tin can, half full of rainwater. I drank it all. My reflection rippled in it. An old woman's face, dirt-streaked, eyes hollow but alive. Tom's voice came back to me then, clear as if he were standing right behind me. You always were stubborn, Edna. Too stubborn to die easy. He used to say it whenever I worked through a fever or patched the barn roof myself, because Justin wasn't good with ladders. I smiled. Even now, he was right. I used one of the cot legs as a walking stick and left the cabin. The air outside was sharp, almost metallic. The forest smelled different in the morning, wet and raw. Steam rose from the ground where the sun touched it. I followed the light again. West. Always west. By mid-morning, I found a patch of blackberry bushes, wild and tangled. Half the berries were shriveled, but some were still good. I ate with shaking hands, thorns tearing my fingers. The sweetness nearly broke me. Tears came then, but quiet ones. Tears of life. Not today, I whispered. You hear me, Lynn? Not today. The path ahead dipped down into a narrow ravine. Rocks, mud, roots, nature's trap. I almost turned back, but the slope pointed the same direction I needed, so I started down, steadying myself with the stick. Halfway through, the earth shifted beneath me. I went down hard, rolling, dirt filling my mouth, shoulder screaming. When I stopped, I couldn't move for a moment. The sky spun. A trickle of blood slid down my neck. It took me 5 minutes just to get to my knees again. The walking stick was gone. My right wrist felt wrong, maybe sprained, maybe worse. But the air was different here, less thick. I heard something faint, like a hum, low and steady. I held my breath. Engines. I froze, listening. There it was again. Not close, but not far either. I started crawling toward the sound. It wasn't heroic. It was pathetic, slow, desperate, but it was movement. Inch by inch, across damp soil and fallen leaves. My body had stopped being mine hours ago. It was just a tool now. I used it. After what felt like hours, I saw it, a flash of gray between the trees. Metal. I dragged myself closer. A road. Narrow, cracked, but real. I laughed then. A dry, broken sound that scared a crow off the guardrail. I made it, but the road was empty. No cars, no people, just silence and the faint buzz of insects. My laugh turned to a sob. I sat on the shoulder, breathing in dust and exhaust ghosts. And for the first time since that morning in the woods, I let my mind drift home. I pictured the house on Laurel Street, the lilac bush Tom planted before he died, the chipped mailbox with my name still half-painted, E. Howell. I imagined Justin standing in the driveway, maybe rehearsing his story for the police. She just wandered off. You know how she was. Forgetful. And Lynn, with her perfect hair, crying on command. She was good at that. Always had been. I pressed my palm to the asphalt, rough and warm. "You'll see me again," I said aloud. "You'll see me walk up that porch." A shadow moved. For a moment, I thought it was my imagination. Then I heard it, the low rumble of an engine. A truck appeared at the curve, headlights off, slow. I waved my arms weakly. The driver slammed on the brakes, dust flying. A man climbed out, mid-40s, wearing a red cap and the kind of look people reserve for ghosts. "Jesus, lady," he said. "You okay?" I tried to speak, but the words tangled. Only a hoarse whisper came out. "Please, I need town." He hesitated, then nodded. "Get in. I'll take you." He helped me into the passenger seat. The smell of gasoline and coffee filled the cab. He offered me water from a plastic bottle. I drank it in one go. "What happened?" he asked as we started moving. "You lost?" I looked out the window at the trees sliding past. "Something like that." "You got family around here?" I almost laughed. "Not anymore." He didn't push. Drove in silence. When the forest thinned and the first rooftops appeared, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not relief, not fear. Something in between. I wasn't done suffering. I was just done being lost. "Drop me near Mill Avenue," I told him. "I can walk from there." "You sure?" he asked. I nodded. "I've been walking a long time." He left me by the old gas station, the one I'd passed that morning before they took me in. I stood there, watching his truck fade into the distance. I was home. Not safe yet, but home's close enough to start a war. The first thing I noticed was how normal everything looked. Cars passed. People walked dogs, carried groceries, yelled into phones. The gas station had the same faded banner fluttering over the window, now serving breakfast biscuits. My town hadn't changed. Not for my disappearance, not for my suffering. Life, it seemed, went on without me just fine. I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I walked, slow and lopsided, like someone recovering from surgery, down Mill Avenue toward the only place that would let me disappear for a while, the Golden Pine Motel. It had been there since the 70s, still had the same cracked neon sign and flower pots with plastic geraniums. I hadn't stepped inside in over 20 years, not since Tom's brother came to visit and drank too much to stay in our house. The man behind the desk didn't recognize me. That was good. "You need a room?" he asked, glancing at my dirt-streaked clothes. "Yes," I said. "Just a night." He didn't ask questions. Maybe I looked like someone who'd run. Maybe I did. The room was cold, smelled of bleach and old air. I peeled off my shoes, wincing as the skin of my heel stuck to the sock. I didn't cry. I just sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, watching the old TV in the corner without turning it on. I could have called someone, the police, the local station. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I opened the motel drawer and found a thin notepad with a stubby pencil. I started writing, not a letter, not a confession, a list. What I gave them: $42,000 for Justin's failed business, the house, still in my name, but for tax reasons they paid the bills, the Toyota Camry. I stopped driving Lynn's dental surgery. The pool installation for the grandkids who never visited. Power of attorney signed 3 years ago under pressure. My insurance policy, updated 6 months ago, Justin listed as beneficiary. Each line felt like pulling a tooth, not because of the money, but because of how easily I'd said yes. I used to tell myself it was love. That's what mothers do. We help. We give. We stay quiet. But now every yes felt like a nail, and they'd use those nails to build my coffin. When I finished the list, I folded the paper and tucked it under my pillow. Then I lay back, staring at the cracked ceiling. I didn't sleep. I just waited. At 7 p.m., I left the room. I walked slowly to the edge of town, toward Laurel Street, my street. I didn't get close enough to be seen, just far enough to see the lights. My house was lit up. Porch lights. Living room. Kitchen. I recognized the pattern. It was the company's over setting. And then I saw the reason. Balloons tied to the mailbox. Silver. Floating like apologies. They were throwing a memorial. I stood in the shadows of the oak tree across the street and watched as the guests arrived. Neighbors, colleagues, a few people from Justin's church group. They brought food, hugged each other, laughed. And then I saw her, Lynn. In a dark dress, hair pulled back, eyes red, but makeup flawless. She was good, I'll give her that. She could sell grief like a professional. She stood at the top of the steps, hand to her heart, nodding as people offered condolences. Justin wasn't outside, but I could imagine him inside, preparing his speech. We lost her too soon. She was forgetful. We thought she was just going for a walk. We never imagined. I felt nothing, no rage, no heartbreak, just a deep, precise clarity. They were mourning me. Beneath my roof. Over food I probably paid for. Let them cry. Let them grieve. Let them believe, for now, that they got away with it. Because tomorrow, everything would change. I turned and walked back to the motel, each step steadier than the last. I slept that night, deep and cold, like stone. When I woke, it was with one thought in my mind. I need my money, my rights, my name. At 9 sharp, I walked into my bank. The teller, young, bright smiled, froze a little when she saw me. "Ma'am? I'm sorry, I'd like to speak to Richard Duncan," I said. My account manager. A pause. Then, of course, they called him from the back. He came out 5 minutes later, holding a clipboard and a coffee cup. He nearly dropped both when he saw me. "Mrs. Howell?" "Alive," I said, "and I want to review my accounts." We sat in his glass-walled office. He fumbled with his pen, sweating. We were informed you were, your son." "I didn't ask what he told you," I said calmly. "I asked to review my accounts. All of them. Today." He swallowed. "Yes, right away." It took an hour. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every monthly autopay I hadn't approved. Turns out, Justin had been busy. Reallocating, renaming, consolidating assets, he told Richard 2 weeks ago, preparing, no doubt, for the payout. By noon, I had frozen every joint account. By 12:30, I had revoked the power of attorney. At 1, I called my lawyer. "Tom's old estate guy?" he asked. "No," I said. "Someone sharper." Because this wasn't just about protecting what was mine. It was about making them answer. By 2, I was back in my motel room, holding a manila folder full of papers. Legal ones, real ones. Power, not performance. I hadn't decided yet when to show up. Not at dinner. Not at church. No. I'd wait for the day they thought they'd won. The day the check arrived, and then I'd walk through that door. Not a ghost, not a victim, but a reckoning. By the time I left the motel, 2 days had passed. I'd washed the dirt from my face, trimmed my hair with the motel scissors, even borrowed a pale cardigan from the thrift store next door. When I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. There was something in my eyes that hadn't been there before. Stillness. Not forgiveness. Just the kind that comes after you stop asking for it. I took a cab to the other side of town. I didn't tell the driver where I really lived. "Near Maple and 7th, I said. "The White House with the lilacs." He nodded. Didn't care. I was grateful for that. People who don't care are useful when you're planning to come back from the dead. The air was heavy, thick with the promise of rain. I asked him to stop half a block early. My hip ached when I climbed out, but pain felt different now. Less like suffering, more like proof. Proof that I'd survived. The first thing I noticed as I turned the corner was the banner. "In loving memory of Edna Howell, 1949 to 2023. They'd strung it across my porch. I stopped walking. Just stared. My porch. My name. My death. They'd even used the picture from Tom's funeral. The one where I'd worn the blue scarf he'd bought me in Savannah. They must have taken it off the wall in my bedroom. In the driveway, Justin was talking to a man in a dark suit. Insurance representative, I guessed. His posture gave it away. The polite lean, the practiced nod, the fake sympathy. Lynn hovered near them, hands clasped, eyes moist. She played her role beautifully. I stood behind the neighbor's hedge, watching. Justin was clean-shaven now, hair slicked back, wearing the jacket I'd given him for his last birthday. He looked younger than he was. He'd always been good at looking presentable when it mattered. The man handed him a document. Justin signed it without hesitation. "That's it," the agent said. "Once the check clears, you'll receive confirmation by mail. I'm sorry again for your loss." Justin's voice was smooth, calm. "Thank you. She was a wonderful woman." I almost laughed. A wonderful woman. The kind you abandon among trees. When the man drove off, Lynn turned to Justin, her smile dropping the second the car disappeared. "So, how much?" "Enough," he said. "More than enough." I watched them walk inside. Lynn's arm looped through his, my son and his perfect wife. planning their new life on my bones. I stayed outside until the rain started. Cold drops, thin and unrelenting. Then I walked to the end of the street and sat at the bus stop. A woman next to me, middle-aged, carrying a grocery bag, offered me a tissue. "Funeral?" she asked softly, nodding toward the house. I hesitated. "Something like that." She smiled kindly. "My mother's anniversary was last week. I still expect her to call sometimes. Silly, isn't it?" "Not silly," I said. "Just human." That night, I went back to the motel, turned on the TV for the first time. The local news was on. Tragic story continues as family and friends mourn the disappearance of 74-year-old Edna Howell, the anchor said. Authorities have not ruled out an accident. They showed my picture, my house, my son's fake grief. I watched it all, silent. Then I turned the TV off and sat in the dark. It wasn't grief I felt. It was a strange, simmering satisfaction. They'd built a perfect lie, and I was going to burn it, one truth at a time. The next morning, I went back to the bank. Richard had done his job well. The accounts were frozen. The life insurance flag was under investigation. The legal trail had begun. Then I called my lawyer, Ms. Pierce, sharp as glass, 40, eyes like a hawk. I'd found her through a recommendation from the motel clerk's cousin, of all people. Small towns have their uses. She listened carefully as I told her everything, every transaction, every document, every manipulation. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said quietly, "Mrs. Howell, if even half of this is true, it's attempted murder." I nodded. "They won't see it that way." She adjusted her glasses. "Maybe not, but the police will, especially when they find out who filed the insurance claim." "I don't want them in jail," I said. "Not yet. I want everything back first." Ms. Pierce smiled slightly. "Then we'll start with the house." That afternoon, we drove there together. She insisted I wait in the car while she spoke with them. Rain had turned to drizzle. Through the window, I saw her step onto the porch, knock. Lynn opened the door. Confused at first, then guarded. Justin appeared behind her. They talked. Short, tense. Ms. Pierce handed over an envelope. Legal notice. I couldn't hear what was said, but Lynn's face changed color 3 times. Justin's jaw tightened. He looked out toward the street once, his eyes skimming over the parked car without recognition. Then Ms. Pierce turned and walked back. Calm. Composed. She slid into the passenger seat. "They have 72 hours to vacate," she said. I stared at the windshield, at the wet reflection of my porch. "Good." "You'll have to appear at the hearing," she added, "to confirm identity." I smiled faintly. "I'll be there." That night, I slept with the envelope on my bedside table. The rain tapped the window. For the first time since the woods, I felt something close to peace. Not the soft kind. The kind that comes before a storm. Tomorrow, they would know. Tomorrow, the dead woman was coming home. The courthouse smelled like lemon polish and old arguments. I sat on the wooden bench near courtroom 3B, a folder on my lap, my fingers resting on its edge. Around me, people whispered, scribbled, clicked their pens. Divorce hearings, small claims, probate disputes. But me? I was here because I'd come back from the dead, and I had paperwork to prove it. "Mrs. Howell?" The bailiff's voice was calm, polite. I stood, my knees stiff but steady. "Yes." He opened the door. "They're ready for you." Inside, the courtroom was almost empty. Just a judge, a clerk, and Ms. Pierce beside me. At the other table, Justin and Lynn. Justin's head snapped up the moment I stepped in. His mouth opened, then closed. I watched the blood drain from his face. Lynn didn't turn. Not right away. She just stared straight ahead, hands folded like a girl in church. But I saw her shoulders stiffen, as if she'd felt a ghost brush past. The judge glanced down at the document before her. This hearing concerns the verification of identity for Mrs. Edna Howell in relation to property and insurance claims initiated by third parties. Is the petitioner present? I am, I said, voice even. Justin blinked, then stood abruptly. Your Honor, this is insane. She's... He faltered. Couldn't say it. Alive, I finished for him. I'm alive. Lynn finally looked at me then. Her eyes scanned me like I was some street performer pretending to be something I wasn't. She didn't say a word, but I saw it in her face. Fear. The judge didn't smile, but her tone softened. We'll begin by confirming your identity, Mrs. Howell. I handed over my birth certificate, social security card, driver's license, expired, but mine. Ms. Pierce passed the medical record from the urgent care clinic I'd visited the day after escaping the woods. Photos of injuries, police report filed that morning, all lined up, page after page. The judge reviewed everything silently. Justin sat like stone. Only once did I see him glance at Lynn, and that glance said everything. This wasn't part of the plan. They thought I'd died quietly, that nature would cover their crime. Instead, I came back with ink and witnesses. After a long pause, the judge looked up. The court recognizes Mrs. Edna Howell as legally alive and in full capacity to manage her estate. Effective immediately, all property and financial rights revert to her. Ms. Pierce nodded. We'll begin proceedings to reverse the transfer of authority and restore ownership of the Laurel Street home. The judge tapped her gavel once. So ordered. That was it. No dramatics, no outrage. Just the sound of a gavel and the end of their game. As we stood to leave, Justin stepped toward me. His voice dropped to a whisper. Mom, what are you doing? I looked him in the eye. I'm coming home. Lynn grabbed his arm, pulling him back. Don't, she hissed. But I wasn't done. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, may I request a sheriff's escort when I return to the property? The judge nodded. Granted. That afternoon, I watched from a distance as a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. Justin opened it, said something. The officer handed him the same notice Ms. Pierce had already given. Lynn stood in the hallway, arms folded, not moving, not speaking. They had 48 hours left. I didn't go back to the motel. I checked into a small inn near the library, walked the block myself, sat on a bench outside the old bakery and watched people pass. Nobody recognized me. Or maybe they did and weren't sure if they were seeing a ghost. That night, I wrote again. Not a list this time. Not facts. A letter. To my granddaughter. To Maggie. If they've let you believe I died, I want you to know the truth. I didn't. They left me. But I came back. And I didn't come back for revenge. I came back to remember who I am. You always saw me, even when they didn't. I'll be waiting when you're ready to find me. Love, Grandma. I folded the letter, sealed it, and walked it to the post office at sunrise. The woman behind the counter looked at the name and address. Your family? She asked. I smiled. Not yet, but maybe again someday. Then I turned toward Laurel Street, my porch, my name still on the mailbox. Tomorrow they'd be gone, and I'd walk back into my house, not as a guest, not as a mother begging for space, but as the woman who built it, alone, alive, and free. I didn't want to go to the police, Not because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, though I knew that was a risk. I didn't want to because it made it real. Because once you name a thing, it becomes something you have to carry forever. But what they did had a name, and I was done pretending otherwise. That morning, the sun rose clear. No rain, no mist, just light, honest and harsh. I put on the navy blouse I'd bought at the thrift store and buttoned it all the way up. There was a small tear under the left arm. I didn't fix it. Let them see the damage. Let them know it wasn't all polished and neat. The station hadn't changed. Still the same waiting chairs with worn vinyl. Same flag in the corner. Same front desk with the chipped sign, "Be kind. We're here to help." I stepped forward. The woman behind the desk looked up from her computer. "Morning. Can I help you?" "Yes," I said. "I'd like to report a crime." Her expression didn't change. "All right. What kind of crime?" "Attempted murder," I said. Now she looked at me. "Excuse me?" "My name is Edna Howell, 74 years old, resident of Laurel Street." I handed her my ID and a folded document from Ms. Pierce, a notarized statement with dates, medical notes, and a timeline. "I was left to die in Sequoia Woods 5 days ago by my son and his wife." She blinked. Slowly. Just a moment. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a small, windowless room, the kind where you start to sweat even when it's cold. A younger officer came in, Detective Hanley. Mid-30s, neat haircut, the kind of face that looked more comfortable behind a laptop than in the woods. But his eyes were steady. "Mrs. Howell, I'm sorry. We were told you were dead?" I said. "Yes, so was I." He paused. "May I record this conversation?" I nodded. The red light blinked on. He folded his hands. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." So I did. From the morning they said we were going on a short hike, to the moment they drove off, to the 2 nights in the woods, the blisters, the berries, the rusted cabin, the walk to the road, the truck driver who picked me up, the motel, the bank, the lawyer, the insurance paperwork already in motion. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. Hanley didn't interrupt, except to ask dates and names. He wrote everything down. When I finished, I pulled my sleeve back and showed him the bruises still fading down my arms, the cuts on my palms, the raw skin at my ankle. "I've already been checked by a doctor," I said. "Everything's documented." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Do you know why they would do this?" I looked at him. "You're a smart man, detective. You know why." "Money. Almost $250,000 from the life insurance," I said. "Plus the house, the accounts, and whatever else they thought they could keep." He exhaled slowly. "You understand that this will be delicate. They're your family." "They were," I corrected. "Not anymore." He nodded. "Do you want to press charges?" "I want it investigated, properly. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for truth." He closed the file. "You'll hear from us within 48 hours. If what you're saying holds up, and it looks like it does, we'll move forward." I stood. My knees creaked, but I didn't care. "Detective?" "Yes?" "I know how this looks. An old woman, family trouble, some bad decisions, some money. Easy to dismiss." He didn't argue. But I crawled out of that forest to look people in the eye. I'm not just a mother or a victim. I'm a witness. And I intend to be heard. His face didn't change, but something in his posture did. "Yes, ma'am." Outside, the light hurt my eyes. I pulled my sunglasses from my pocket, the cheap kind from a rotating rack. Put them on like armor. I didn't go home. Not yet. I walked to the coffee shop on 8th, the one I hadn't visited since Tom died. Ordered a black coffee. Sat by the window. I watched people live. and I waited. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mrs. Howell? Hanley's voice. We've reviewed initial documentation. I've assigned a team. We're opening a formal investigation. I closed my eyes. Not in relief, in readiness. They had thrown dirt over me. Now they'd watch me rise. There was a time I would have died for Justin. Not in the dramatic sense, not the kind you see in movies. I mean the quiet kind, the everyday kind, the kind where you work double shifts so your child can go on the school trip, where you eat toast for dinner so there's enough left for their soccer fees, where you lie for them when the neighbors ask why the front window is broken again. I did die for him, a little, bit by bit. But back then, I thought that was what mothers were supposed to do. Tom and I had him late. I was 36. Tom was 41. Everyone said we were brave, having a baby so close to middle age. I didn't feel brave. I just felt lucky. Justin was a soft baby, always warm, always reaching. He used to sleep curled against my side like he'd never need anyone else. When he was 4, he told me I made the best pancakes in the world. When he was 8, he said he'd buy me a house with a gold roof one day. When he was 12, he cried when I left for a weekend training seminar. When he was 16, he stopped talking to me unless he wanted something. I told myself it was normal. Teenagers pull away. They come back. But Justin never came back. Not really. He got into community college, then dropped out after a semester. Got a job at an insurance firm. Moved out when he was 23. Not far, just 20 minutes away. But it might as well have been another planet. He stopped calling. Stopped visiting, unless he needed something. Money, usually. The first time he asked for a loan, it was small. Just $200, Ma. My paycheck's late. Then it became $500, then $2,000, then $10. I gave it. Always. I had savings, I had Tom's pension, and I had the memory of a little boy who once made me a card that said, "You're my best friend, Mommy. Forever." I kept that card. I still have it. Folded in half, tucked into my Bible like a pressed flower from another season. Then came Lynn. She arrived like a gust of perfume and hard opinions. She smiled too wide and hugged too short. She said things like, "Oh, isn't that adorable?" when I showed her the quilts I made. Said I should downsize because stairs weren't safe at my age. Justin changed around her. Or maybe he just became more himself. She handled everything. His emails, his bills, even his phone sometimes. "We're just trying to simplify things," she said once. You know how scatterbrained he gets. But I knew better. They took over my house 1 inch at a time. First it was just them staying for a weekend while their place was fumigated. Then a month, because the kitchen needed repairs. Then suddenly, I was living in the guest room, and they were managing the property. She changed the furniture, painted the walls, threw out my teapot, said it was cracked, said it was unsafe. They never asked, and I never stopped them. I told myself I was keeping the peace, that Justin was under pressure, that Lynn meant well, even if she grated. But somewhere deep inside, I felt it. The slow erasure. It started with space, then routines, then decisions, then names. He stopped calling me Mom, started calling me Edna when we were around her friends, said it was more modern, said Mrs. Howell sounded too distant, but Mom made people think I was older than I looked. I smiled, laughed it off, told myself it didn't matter, but it did. Because the day someone erases your name is the day they start forgetting you're a person. When they asked me to sign over financial rights, just in case something happens, I hesitated for the first time. But they brought papers. They brought coffee. They brought charm. And I told myself again, it was fine. I had nothing to hide. That was the last time I saw Justin's eyes look at me with anything like warmth. After that, every interaction had an edge. Did you remember to pay the property taxes? Have you refilled your prescriptions? Are you still writing checks to the church? That's not smart, Ma. He called me Ma when he was annoyed. Only then. Then came the insurance policy. Let's just update it, Lynn said sweetly. It's outdated. You still have Tom listed as primary. I looked at her. Tom is dead. She smiled, like I was slow. Exactly. So we'll list Justin. You know, for safety. That was the moment. The one I didn't admit even to myself. I saw it in her eyes. Not love, not care, intent. And I signed anyway. Because some part of me still wanted to believe I mattered. Still hoped he remembered those pancakes, that gold roof promise, that crayon card in my Bible. But promises fade, and sons forget. That's what I thought when I woke up in the woods, lips cracked, throat dry, leg twisted under me. That's what I thought as I pulled myself toward the light. And that's what I knew now. With my body back, my name restored, my porch reclaimed. They hadn't tried to kill me because they hated me. They'd done it because I'd become inconvenient. Because they thought I had no more use. But they were wrong. I was still here. And for the first time in my life, they were going to see who I really was. Without kindness to hide behind. Without love to protect them. Without silence to save them. No more mother. No more bank. No more ghost. Just me, Edna Howell. They were still there when we pulled up. The U-Haul was in the driveway, the back door open. 2 suitcases stacked beside it, but nothing packed inside. The curtains were still drawn, porch lights off. Mail untouched. They weren't preparing to leave. They were waiting for someone to change their mind. I didn't. The sheriff's deputy stepped out of the car first. Young. Quiet. By the book. Ms. Pierce followed, calm as ever, holding a copy of the court order in her hand. I was the last to open the car door. I took my time. My foot touched the driveway like a promise. The deputy knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Then, "This is sheriff's office. You've been given formal notice. Time's up." We heard movement. The sound of blinds shifting. Then the door opened. Lynn stood there in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, hair pulled into a high bun like it was laundry day. She looked me in the eye, then looked past me like I was fog. "What is this?" she asked flatly. Ms. Pierce stepped forward. "You've been formally evicted under emergency reversal of transfer of property. Per court order, the legal owner has returned." "You mean her?" Lynn's mouth twisted. "Yes, Ms. Pierce said. "Her." Justin appeared behind her, barefoot, half-shaven, holding a phone. "This is unnecessary," he said. "We're appealing. You can't just come in here like this." The deputy held up his hand. "Sir, you've had 72 hours. You were given written notice and time to vacate. This is not a discussion." Justin looked at me then, for the first time since the woods. Really looked. He didn't say my name. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't say sorry. He said, "You're ruining everything." I almost smiled, because it was true. They hadn't just counted on my death. They'd built a whole life on it. And now I was standing in the doorway with a court order and 2 witnesses, alive and unblinking. "I'll wait outside," I said calmly. "You have 20 minutes. Lynn crossed her arms. "You think this makes you noble?" You think anyone's going to care? You're just a bitter old. Ms. Pierce interrupted, voice still soft. You're not helping yourself, Mrs. Howell. I'm not her, Lynn snapped. No, I said. You never were. They slammed the door shut. Inside, I heard drawers opening, a cabinet, the hurried thump of boxes being half filled. But I didn't move. I stood on my walkway and looked at the street. The neighbors weren't watching. Curtains twitched, but no one came out. Small towns know how to pretend they didn't see. The deputy stayed by the steps. Ms. Pierce stood beside me. Do you want to say anything? She asked quietly. To them? She nodded. No. She waited. But to you, yes, I said. I'm listening. I looked at my garden, the dry planters, the hedge they never trimmed. I spent 30 years taking care of this house. Paint, leaks, repairs, every little crack. I took pride in it, and then I spent 5 years watching them unmake it. Piece by piece. First they changed the paint, then they changed the rules, then they changed me. Ms. Pierce didn't interrupt. I thought love meant silence, meant giving, meant patience. And now? She asked. Now I know love should never be taken for granted, I said. And silence isn't always grace. Sometimes it's just permission. The door opened. Lynn stomped out first, carrying a duffel bag and a plastic tub labeled office. She didn't look at me. Justin followed, slower. He had a backpack and one suitcase. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt untucked. He stopped halfway down the steps. You could have talked to me, he said. I did, I replied. You stopped listening. He looked like he wanted to say more, then didn't. They loaded the car in silence. I waited until they drove away. Then I stepped inside. The air was stale. The living room reeked of some kind of reed diffuser, vanilla and chemicals. The walls were still the pale gray Lynn had insisted on. The curtains were new. But the shape of the house was mine. The silence inside wasn't empty. It was clean. Ms. Pierce walked through behind me, checking the paperwork, snapping photos for documentation. The deputy made a note, then stepped out to radio confirmation. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen. My old kettle was gone. So was the fruit bowl Tom and I bought in Santa Barbara. The photo wall had been replaced with prints of trees and quotes in cursive. One read, "Family is everything." I took it off the wall and set it gently on the counter. Then I opened the back door and let the air in. Later, after they all left, I made tea. Not from my kettle, it was gone, but from a dented saucepan I found under the sink. I drank it standing in the yard, next to the lilac bush. It hadn't bloomed in years. Maybe it would next spring, maybe not. But it was mine again. Every dry branch, every ugly room, every broken drawer. Mine. And this time, I wasn't giving it away. I didn't call Maggie. I just wrote the letter, dropped it in the mail, waited. I didn't expect her to come. She lived 2 states over now, college, job, her own life, and she hadn't visited since the year after Tom died. But 3 days after I reclaimed my house, there was a knock at the door. Not the doorbell. A knock. Soft, uncertain. I opened it, and there she was. 24, maybe 25 now. Hair darker than I remembered. A ring in her nose. A small suitcase at her feet. We stared at each other. She was the first to speak. You're alive. I nodded. Looks that way. She swallowed. Her eyes filled, but didn't fall. I thought they were lying. They were. I mean, I hoped. But they said. She trailed off. Looked behind her, like maybe she still wasn't sure she wasn't dreaming. Come in, Mags, I said. She stepped inside slowly, like the air might shatter if she moved too fast. She stood in the hallway, looked around. They changed everything. They tried, I said. She dropped the suitcase. Then she turned to me and hugged me. Tight. No words. Just warmth and pressure and that smell I used to know. Shampoo and notebooks and something young I couldn't name anymore. I didn't cry, but I felt something crack open in my chest. We sat in the kitchen. No big talk. No explanations yet. I made tea. She poured honey into hers like she used to as a kid. Way too much. I watched her do it and felt, for a moment, like time had hiccuped. Then she said quietly, "Tell me what really happened." So I did. Not all at once. Not as a speech. Just piece by piece. I told her about the woods, the log, the truck pulling away, the night under the trees, the stream, the way the sky looked when I thought I was going to die, the cabin, the road, the motel, the list. She didn't interrupt. Not once. When I got to the part about the house and the courtroom and the look in her father's eyes when I stepped inside, she leaned forward, her hands curled around the mug like she needed it to stay grounded. And when I finished, she sat back, quiet, still, her face unreadable. Then, I always knew something wasn't right. With them? She nodded. Even when I was little. He wasn't like you. He didn't see people. She looked up. You were the only one who ever did. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't. I'm not surprised they tried, she said. But I'm still angry. Not at you. At them. For thinking they could erase you. They almost did, I admitted. But you came back. I didn't do it to punish them, I said. I did it because I remembered who I was. She looked at me, eyes shining. You're my grandmother, that's who. I smiled. Still am. For as long as you want me to be. She reached into her bag and pulled out a notebook. I started writing about you. After they said you died. I didn't believe them. But I needed a place to put it. She opened to the first page. Read aloud. She was the only woman I ever knew who made silence feel safe. She made her own jam and never wore perfume. She smelled like laundry and old books, and something else I never had a name for, but still miss when I wake up alone. I listened. And this time, I let the tears come. Because I'd spent so long being unseen. So long thinking I'd been wasted on people who didn't want me. But this girl, this woman, she remembered. And maybe that was enough. We spent the rest of the afternoon fixing the porch light, rearranging the living room, finding the old quilts in the attic where Lynn had stuffed them into a plastic tub labeled "Donate." We hung one over the back of the couch. I want to stay a few days, Maggie said. You can stay as long as you need, I replied. That night, we watched a movie on my laptop, ate popcorn from the same bowl Tom used to use. She fell asleep halfway through, curled under the quilt. I sat beside her and watched her breathe. Not everything broken can be fixed. But some things come back. Not because you chase them, but because you survive long enough for them to find you. I got the call on a Wednesday morning. Maggie was still asleep upstairs. The floor creaked the way it always had. Familiar. Honest. I was drinking my tea by the kitchen window when the phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. I knew before I answered. Mrs. Howell? This is Detective Hanley. We need you to come in today, 11 a.m. He didn't ask. He told, which meant the case had moved. Am I being charged? I asked. No, ma'am, but we need your official statement on record for the case. And there are questions. that part, he said carefully. Questions. I said I'd be there. I didn't wake Maggie. I left her a note on the kitchen table. Back by noon. Make coffee like I showed you. Low heat, long brew. There's bread in the fridge. Love you. Then I got dressed. Dark slacks, white blouse, wedding ring still on. Not for sentiment, for clarity. I'd built a life. It had weight. Let them see it. The station smelled like it always did. Bleach, paper, and something faintly sour. Detective Hanley met me at the door. This way, he said. We sat in a small interview room. 2 chairs, 1 table, no glass, no drama. But the tape recorder was there. He clicked it on. Date, Wednesday. Time, 11:06 a.m. Officer present, Detective Matthew Hanley. Interviewee, Mrs. Edna Howell. Purpose, formal statement regarding alleged attempted homicide by family members Justin Howell and Lynn Howell. He looked at me. Ready? I nodded. He started slow. Walk me through that morning, the hike. I told him everything again, this time with more detail. The fake cheer in Justin's voice, the way Lynn checked her watch when we got to the trail, the moment they asked me to sit down, just for a second, and how the silence after they walked off was louder than any goodbye. Hanley scribbled notes, nodded, asked for clarification. Then, did they ever actually say anything to suggest intent? That this was more than abandonment? I looked him in the eye. They took my water, my phone, my ID. They left me with nothing but a smile and a lie. That's not accident. That's calculation. He didn't argue. And when I returned, I added, they'd already filed the life insurance claim. That wasn't panic. That was preparedness. Hanley leaned back. We have the claim paperwork. Signed, submitted. 2 days after you went missing. Not reported missing until 5. I nodded. Because they thought I wouldn't make it that long. A long pause. Mrs. Howell, do you want them arrested? It was the question I knew would come. The one Maggie had quietly tiptoed around. The one Ms. Pierce hadn't dared ask. I answered without blinking. I want them held accountable. Meaning, you don't bury your mother alive and walk away with a check. That's not family. That's fraud. And it's attempted murder. He nodded once. We're building the case, but there will be scrutiny. I'm not here for pity, I said. I'm here for truth. He looked tired, not unsympathetic, just tired. You're remarkably calm, he said finally. I already survived the hard part, I replied. The rest is just paper. I signed the statement. Page after page. No hand tremble, no pause. When I stood, he walked me to the door. We'll be in touch soon. You've done more than most would. I smiled faintly. That's the thing about surviving, detective. You don't stop just because it's uncomfortable. I walked back out into the daylight. Crisp, cold. The kind of October wind that makes your lungs sting. I didn't go straight home. I stopped by the grocery store. Bought lemons, thyme, fresh bread. Maggie liked real food. Said it felt like memory. When I came home, she was sitting on the porch, reading. She looked up. You okay? I sat beside her. Getting there. Are they going to jail? I looked at the street, at the mailbox with my name. I don't know. That's not up to me. But you want them to pay. No, I said. I want them to be seen. That's worse in a way. She didn't speak, just leaned her head against my shoulder. For a long time, we sat in silence. Then she said, You scare me a little. I smiled. Good. Maybe that means I finally did something right. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, sealed with the county's crest. I found it tucked into the screen door the way they do when they know the person lives alone. No knock, no ring, just placed gently, like bad news delivered with manners. I didn't open it right away. I took it into the kitchen, placed it on the table, and poured myself coffee first. Sat down. Smelled the steam. Then I picked up the envelope and slid it open with the same knife I'd used to slice tomatoes for lunch. Subpoena, Superior Court of County. It was official now. The hearing would be in 2 weeks. Preliminary. Not criminal yet, but the start of something that might be. Witness required. Edna M. Howell. Case reference, fraudulent insurance claim and elder neglect investigation. Justin and Lynn's names were printed just below. I folded the letter and set it down. There was no fear in me, not anymore. But there was a strange kind of grief, not for myself, for the version of me who once believed this would never be possible. The day passed slowly. Maggie was out. Library, I think. She was building a graduate school application, folding it into the quiet corners of her visit. She hadn't said how long she'd stay. I hadn't asked. I spent the afternoon going through old boxes in the basement, not because I needed anything, but because I wanted to remember what I kept, what I let go, what they had thrown out without asking. I found the quilt Tom's mother had made us for our wedding, still folded, still soft. I found Justin's baby shoes, wrapped in tissue, his report cards, a birthday card he'd made at 5 years old where the Y in happy curled backward. I kept everything, and it hadn't saved me. That night, Maggie made dinner, pasta, garlic bread. We ate at the kitchen table, then she asked, "Do you want me there?" "At the hearing?" She nodded. I thought about it, then shook my head. "No, I need to stand alone." She didn't argue, just said, "Then I'll be waiting when you come home." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. She didn't flinch. 2 days later, Ms. Pierce came over with more paperwork. Legal language, court logistics, timelines. She was brisk but kind, always with that edge of iron under her calm. "They'll try to spin it," she warned, "claim confusion, miscommunication, emotional stress, say they thought you wandered off, that you'd shown signs of cognitive decline." I smiled faintly. "Let them. You have medical records, neighbors who saw you healthy before the trip, bank statements, security footage, motel logs, and teeth marks in my palms," I added. "But yes, I have evidence." She looked at me. "Do you want to testify fully or just submit a statement?" "I'll testify," I said. She nodded once. "Good." When she left, I stood at the door for a long time after it closed, watching the street. Somewhere out there they were preparing too, practicing lines, assembling paperwork, rehearsing grief. They wouldn't expect me to be steady. They expected the woman they buried, and that woman was gone. I was the one who came back. And this time, I wasn't coming to beg. I was coming to tell the truth. The courtroom was small. No jury, no cameras. Just a judge, a clerk, 2 lawyers, and the sound of old wood creaking under every step. I sat at the witness table. Ms. Pierce sat behind me. Across the room, Justin and Lynn. She wore beige. He wore regret, poorly ironed. The judge looked over the files, flipped a page, cleared his throat. "This hearing concerns the legitimacy of an insurance claim filed in the name of Edna Howell, presumed deceased and later found alive. The court will hear testimony to determine whether sufficient grounds exist for referral to the district attorney." He looked at me. "Mrs. Howell, you may begin." I didn't shake. I didn't rehearse. I just told the truth. I went into the woods with my son and his wife on October 18th. They said it would be a short walk. It wasn't. They brought snacks and water for themselves. They told me to rest. Then they walked away. I never saw them turn back. I paused, just long enough for the room to feel it. They left me, on purpose. I had no phone, no ID, no food. I waited 12 hours. I crawled for 2 days, found a cabin, found a road. A man picked me up, drove me to town. I went to the bank. The insurance had already been filed. They were planning my funeral before I even found water. Justin didn't look at me. Lynn crossed her legs, then uncrossed them. The judge asked, had there been prior conflicts? Reasons they might claim confusion or misjudgment? I nodded once. Plenty of tension. I wasn't convenient anymore. I'd given them money, power of attorney, the house, my insurance policy. After that, I was just, wait. Lynn's lawyer stood. Young, sharp suit, voice too smooth. Mrs. Howell, is it possible your memory is affected by trauma? That you may have misunderstood your son's intentions? I looked straight at him. My memory is affected, yes, but not by trauma. By the smell of pine needles and rot. By sleeping on dirt with a bruised spine. By the sound of their voices fading into nothing. Objection. The judge raised a hand. Let her finish. I leaned forward, quiet. They didn't forget me. They didn't lose me. They left me, and then they lied. Ms. Pierce rose next. Can you confirm that the insurance policy was updated 6 months prior? Yes. And who suggested the change? Lynn. She said it was outdated. She smiled when she said it. Maggie would later tell me she watched the transcript on the public docket site, read every word. She smiled when she said it. That's the line she remembered most. The rest was paperwork, exhibits, bank records, medical forms, photos of my legs, raw from crawling, statements from the motel clerk, the truck driver, the nurse. By the time we finished, even the clerk wasn't making eye contact with the defense. The judge looked down at his desk, then up at Justin. You're entitled to respond. Briefly. Justin stood. His voice shook. She was confused. She's old. She forgets things. We thought she wandered. We didn't know she was missing right away. The judge raised an eyebrow. You filed a life insurance claim before filing a missing persons report. Justin stammered. It was a mistake. Lynn didn't speak at all. Her lawyer tried, but it didn't matter. The damage wasn't in the documents. It was in the room, in the way silence started to lean toward truth. The judge closed the folder. This court finds sufficient cause for referral to the district attorney for criminal investigation under grounds of fraud, elder abuse, and attempted homicide. Gavel. Just once. That was all. I stood slowly. My knees ached. My hands trembled a little now, but not from fear, from release. I didn't look back at them, not when I stepped down, not when I reached the door. Outside, the air was cool, clean. Ms. Pierce joined me on the steps. You did what you came to do, she said. I nodded. They can lie all they want now. The world knows. And what will you do next? I looked up at the sky, pale blue and endless. Live, I said. Fully this time. It was a Thursday afternoon when they came. The sun was low, dust in the air, the kind of quiet hour when most people are still at work and the mail's already come. I'd just finished sweeping the front porch, something I hadn't done in years, but now did almost every day. The rhythm helped. I didn't hear a car, didn't need to. I felt them. I turned around, and there they were. Justin on the path. Lynn just behind him, arms folded tight, sunglasses on like she was avoiding daylight itself. He didn't speak at first, just looked at me like I was a painting he didn't remember buying. I said nothing. Then, finally, he cleared his throat. "Mom, can we talk?" I didn't move. "About what?" He shifted his weight. "About everything. I just think maybe we should Try what?" I asked. He flinched at the sharpness, though I hadn't raised my voice. "Look, I know how it looks," he said quickly. "But we were scared. You were forgetful, wandering sometimes. We thought maybe it was dementia." "You thought dementia comes on in the woods?" I asked. Lynn stepped forward then. "We didn't plan anything, Edna. You're twisting it. You were slowing down. You fell asleep during conversations. You left the stove on once." "I remember," I said. "You brought it up for weeks." "We were worried," she insisted. "People make mistakes when they're trying to protect someone." "You filed a death claim," I said. She looked away. "That was a mistake." "No," I said calmly. "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. This was a decision." Justin's voice dropped. "I didn't think you'd make it out." There it was. He said it quiet, almost like he didn't mean to say it aloud. I watched his hands, shoved in his pockets now, not shaking, not clenched, just still, like he'd finally run out of stories to tell himself. "I'm not here to scream," I said. "Not to shame you. You already did that yourselves." "Then what do you want?" Lynn asked. "Nothing," I said. "I don't want a thing from you." They were quiet then. Long, slow silence. The kind that used to fill the house when Tom was still alive and trying not to say what he really thought of Lynn's cold smile. Justin looked up. "I just thought you might forgive us." "Forgiveness," I said, "is for people who say, 'I was wrong,' not for people who say, 'I had reasons.'" He looked like a child then, a grown man in a shirt 2 sizes too stiff, trying to shrink into himself. I took a step forward. "You want to know what I remember most?" I said. "It's not the hunger, not the cold, not even the crawl." I paused. Let the wind move past us. "I remember how quiet it was after you left me. How it didn't surprise me." He blinked. "Mom?" "No," I said. "You don't get to say that anymore." Lynn turned. "We shouldn't have come." "You're right," I said. They started back toward the car. But before they reached it, I added, "I hope you both find something better to be than what you've been." Lynn didn't turn. Justin did. Just once. "I loved you," he said. I nodded. "I know. Once." They drove off. The tires didn't even crunch loud enough to be dramatic. I stood there for a long time after. Not angry, not empty. Just done. Later that evening, Maggie found me on the porch. "They came?" she asked. "They left," I said. She sat beside me, hand on mine. "Did it help?" I thought about it. "No." But it didn't hurt. We watched the sky shift from pink to gray. The air smelled like dust and old grass. "They'll never understand," Maggie said. "They don't need to," I replied. "They just need to stay gone." And they did. I didn't hear from them again. No more letters, no calls, no lawyer tricks. Just absence. The clean kind. Sometimes that's the best peace you get, and sometimes it's enough. I didn't rebuild my life. Not the way people talk about it, like it's a house you put back together with better nails and newer wood. I just picked up what was still mine. The quiet. The mornings. The sound of my own breath when I wake up without needing to be needed. Maggie stayed through winter, said it was just for a while, but she never set a date to leave. She worked from the library, made dinner most nights, filled the house with that soft noise only young people bring. Music I don't know the words to, laughter through a closed door, footsteps overhead when I forget what day it is. We never talked much about Justin and Lynn after that. They drifted into the background like a bad painting you forget to take down. The police case lingered, slow and cold, like most things that touch money and family. Charges were pending. I didn't chase them. I didn't check the status. I had nothing left to prove. One day, in early March, I sat on the back porch with Maggie and asked her, "What do you think happens to people like them?" She shrugged. They find someone else to take from, or they finally run out of people. I nodded. And what about people like me? She looked at me, soft-eyed and certain. You keep the door locked, and you open the window. That spring, the lilacs bloomed for the first time in 4 years. I don't believe in signs, but I sat beside them one morning, breathing in their scent like something old I thought I'd lost. Not magic, just survival. Maggie planted tomatoes. We painted the kitchen. She found my old recipe cards and made copies. I bought new curtains, not beige, yellow, with white thread like sunlight you could fold. And the house, my house, started to sound like mine again. Not busy, not loud, just honest. One evening, I stood in the bedroom I used to be locked out of. I ran my hand across the dresser. The dust was gone. So were the perfume bottles Lynn left behind. I opened the drawer and placed 3 things inside. The letter I'd written Maggie. The court document restoring my ownership. A photograph of Tom and me on the porch, years ago. His hand on my back, my eyes closed against his shoulder. Not for memory, not for legacy, for truth. Because if this house is ever emptied again, I want someone to know. I was here. And I didn't go quietly. On the first Sunday in May, I walked to church for the first time in 2 years. The woman at the pew, Betty something, looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. Maybe she had. "You look good," she whispered. I smiled. I am. That day, the sermon was about Lazarus. I didn't miss the irony. Afterwards, they served weak coffee and 2 sweet cookies. I took both. Not because I missed them, but because I could. That night, Maggie and I sat on the porch. "What now?" she asked. "Now we live." "No plans?" "None that require anyone's permission." She leaned her head on my shoulder. We watched the stars come out, one by one, like little truths too patient to be loud. And when I finally spoke, it wasn't for her. It was for you. To whoever reads this, they might forget you. They might bury you. They might smile while they do it. But you're not done unless you say so. You get to come back. You get to choose silence or noise or something in between. You get to keep your name, even if you have to crawl for it, especially then. So take it. Take it all back. And when they ask how you did it, say nothing. Just live. If you felt this, share it. Someone out there is still crawling.